Hello. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the podcast if you've listened before. And if you are a first-time listener, welcome to What Are You Doing, Dem? With me, your host, Dem, or Demi, whatever you want to call me. Super excited to have you all listening. I'm honestly surprised at the amount of listeners I've had tune in. I really appreciate it. I assume I know most of you are your friends of mine, so love you guys. But if you found the podcast randomly and you're listening in or you followed, I really appreciate it. And if you haven't followed yet, please don't forget to follow the podcast. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, follow, save the episodes, download them, rate the episodes, and rate the podcast, please. It helps me in the long run. Okay, I'm done begging. Launching right in to today's episode, it's gonna be very unstructured, so I'm gonna warn you guys now. If you don't want like a Q&A unstructured episode, skip this one. I'll be back in like a week and a half. But yeah, super unstructured. And I just asked you guys on Instagram and a couple other places to ask me or send me questions, and I got some really great ones, so I'm gonna do my absolute best to answer them well. I haven't really looked at them just because I wanted to give you like my genuine off the dome answers. Off the dome, is that the saying? Anyway, I want to give you my genuine answers. It's a lot of stuff about being in your 20s, which is very valid. I feel like people are like, your 20s are supposed to be the best years of your life, but low-key, why does it feel like a chaotic mix of burnout, like a quarter life crisis, and like bad? It's just a lot. We're living in such strange times, and I feel like we're living through so many major world events. We just lived through a pandemic. We're in another like weird recession. I'm not gonna get political, but there's just so much going on in the world. So I totally understand where a lot of these questions are coming from, and I will do my absolute best to give good sound advice, but with my flair. So diving right in, the first question I got was, how do I deal with the impulse to change my appearance all the time? That's a great question, and one that I have the answer to, because I have this impulse too. I think most people probably do, especially in the times we are living in. Social media is so social media isn't fun anymore, but beyond it not being fun anymore, I just feel like everything is so looks based, and there's such an impossible beauty standard, like all the filters on TikTok and the algorithm, and everybody's an influencer. Everybody wants to look good. Skinny is back in for some reason right now. So yeah, I understand the pressures people might have in terms of just changing appearance, but I would say when considering dealing with that impulse, I always like to ask myself why I feel a certain way. I'm very introspective, but I actually am. I love to figure out why I'm feeling a certain type of way before I react or do anything. So are you doing it because you're bored? Are you doing it because you want to reinvent yourself? Is it a control thing? Are you feeling insecure and it's just whenever you don't like something about yourself, you change that thing? And there's no wrong answers. Like, how you feel is how you feel. Everybody's feelings are valid, but it's good to know where that impulse is coming from, because sometimes it's not beneficial to make those changes. Like, there are alternative routes you could take. If you're bored, for example, and you want to let me backtrack. I'm going to tell you guys about this thing that I do. I'm a very impulsive person, but also not. I'm a Capricorn. I love control. I don't really love change unless it's something I've planned out. So when I'm impulsive, I have 3 tiers of my impulsiveness. I have my highest tier of impulsiveness, which is things that I could do that would really fuck my shit up or alter my life a little bit. So high stakes impulses. And then I have mid-stake impulses, which are like, I could do it and maybe it'll inconvenience me. Like, when you do things for the plot, it'll be inconveniencing and it might have week to month long effects, but I'll be fine. And then I have really low stake impulses, which is a little purchase, a splurge, just something to itch that scratch. So whenever I have stuff about my appearance, I like to stay in that low to mid tier impulse range, meaning if you want to cut your hair, dye your hair, whatever, do that. That's a low impulse. It's going to grow back. It's going to change. If you want to get a tattoo, that's a mid-level impulse. Think about it. But again, I have tattoos. Do it if it makes you happy. Figure out why, and sometimes scratch that impulse. But if you're going to do cosmetic procedures, things like that, always, I would say do your research. Like, figure out everything you need to know about the procedure, what it looks like on people that look like you, about the practitioner. I'm all for people making changes if you want to. I just think you should do it for the right reasons, and you should do it in a safe way. I've wanted to change things about myself, and I'm a Black woman, so I have a lot more flexibility with my hair, so that's always like a fun thing that I'll do. I've done entire rebrands of the way I want to dress or whatever, so you're allowed to do those things. Like, it's fun. Again, mine are planned out, but you can do it impulsively as well. But again, just have an impulse to your list. And if you are doing it to a point where it's damaging, I would say you need to channel that energy in a different way. So either a different impulse. Basically, I was having a crap day the other day, and I made like a purchase. It wasn't a huge purchase, but it was like this really cute dress, and I didn't really need to buy it. I'm supposed to be saving right now, but it just gave me a little dopamine rush. I sound like an addict, but it really did. It was like such a nice little treat for myself, and that was like a low stakes impulse, like changes my appearance. So I don't know. Do something low stakes, and if you can't do anything at all, I would say look up new hobbies, creative outlets, definitely self-reflect and figure out why you're struggling with your appearance on a consistent basis, and be gentle with yourself while you're figuring that out, because again, we live in a society where it's just very looks based, and it's all we're being fed and bombarded with in the media. So hopefully that answers that. I can go more in depth in a separate episode if that's something you guys want to go more in depth with. But yeah, how do I deal with stress is the next question. What used to stress me out, I've said this so many times, I'm an anxious person in general, and I carry a lot of stress around with me. I have been working really, really hard to not force things that aren't working. This is more, I guess, interpersonal wise with relationships. If something's not working, it's fine. I'm not gonna force it. I'm not gonna go out of my way. It's something that I've done so much in life, and it just adds on to the stress. And then people that want to be in my life, that have been in my life, are people that show up also, and it doesn't feel forced. I let go of unnecessary obligations. I've been learning to say no more often and be like, cap myself out. I feel like I overextended myself a lot when I was younger, and now I have the knowledge and the confidence to say no to unnecessary obligations, and also to myself. Sometimes I have FOMO and I just want to keep going and doing stuff, and I just don't have it in me. Romanticizing rest is another thing that I do. I really love my bed and my home. I feel like people who know me now, like in this current iteration of me, are probably like, what are you talking about? Like, you're always out, you're always doing stuff. But I love rest. I love being at home. Make your space somewhere that's really cozy if you can, and like very homely. So when you can, I think burnout creeps up on a lot of people, and then you just have nothing left to give, and you're miserable and like depressed, and just life sucks. So being aware of your stress, being conscious of it, and dealing with it in like small bursts, I would say, is how I would deal with stress. The next question is, what do you do about regret? Oh, guys, what a question. I had to think for a second. I don't really have a ton of regret, and I'm gonna explain why. I make a very conscious decision. To not regret things, to find, would you call it, the silver lining, like a glass half full perspective. I don't really have any major regrets. Like, sometimes you argue with somebody and you're like, oh, I wish I said that. I'll have things like that. I would say, because there was a side question, which is, do I have a major regret? I think I only regret when I have wanted to express my emotions to people and I haven't. That always makes me feel a little bit poorly afterwards. So whether that's like romantically or friendship wise, those are the things that I usually am like, you should have said how you felt, dealt with the reaction. It wouldn't have been that bad. But I'm very hyper conscious of my time that I have on earth, which is maybe a bit morbid, but it's just the truth. I'm very hyper conscious, and I think one of my biggest fears is having a ton of regret when I'm older, and I should have done this, I should have done that. I really try and honor myself and figure out what it is I want to do and like how I can make those things happen for me. I think accepting that we're meant to make mistakes, nobody's perfect, also helps. So you're not too hard on yourself. Regrets are going to happen one way or another, but try and learn from them and find the silver lining. And people make mistakes, just what happens, move on, alter, pivot, learn from it. Yeah, that's what I would say to that one. Okay, this question is, how do I get out of a situationship? Great question. Oh, how am I going to answer this? I am like queen. That's such an awful thing to say, but I really am. I'm queen of situationships by choice, I should add, because they've always been like a safe space for me. I think I'm a little avoidant. If you don't want to be in a situationship, I think you have to figure out. My answer to everything is always going to be sit with yourself, introspect, figure out what you want. If you know you don't want a situationship and you're in one, were you willingly put in the situation? Do you go into it being like, yeah, I want this, and then things changed? Were you bamboozled into a situationship? Because that does happen. I'd figure it out, and then step one, they probably, I don't want to say they don't respect you, because if you haven't communicated that, you don't know, but more likely than not, they're either not looking for a relationship as well, or they don't respect you. So if you've brought it up and there's no, I don't want to say the word legitimizing, but there's no steps towards it being an actual relationship, just take note of that. You don't need to slowly exit. I think that's like a thing a lot of people do, and women do it a lot. It's like a running joke that women will stay in relationships and stuff until they're emotionally checked out, and then they'll just dip. You can dip before you're emotionally checked out, and it'll suck, but at least you're out of the situation. You're getting to heal faster versus quote unquote wasting your time. I don't believe in like wasting your time. It's such a weird sunk cost fallacy thing, but yeah, you don't owe them a slow exit. You can dip out whenever you want to, and you should probably dip out sooner rather than later. If you don't want to fall back into the situationship, I would say, what is it called? What do the kids call it these days? I'm like acting like I'm old. I'm not. No contact. Yeah, go no contact. Block if you need a block. Delete if you need. I've deleted so many men off of things, and I don't really block people, but I'll delete you and just like mentally clock out. I check out really, really quickly these days. I'm like saying that with pride. Okay, I'm gonna explain that I used to be a more anxiously attached person, but I have anxious avoidant attachment style. Now I am more avoidant, which isn't good. I should be right in the middle in the secure attachment style, but I really like that I'm able to like mentally clock out of things easier. I think part of that is like control thing, letting things go. Learn to mentally clock out. That's how you get out of a situationship as well. And remind yourself why you deserve better, and just, is it something you want? I think, you know, when you're rationalizing a situationship and you're in it and you're like, oh, maybe if I stick around, this person will come to their senses or blah blah blah, you shouldn't have to like convince someone to be with you. So I would keep that in mind. Remind yourself that you deserve better and what you want. I've told this to my friends before and advised my friends' younger siblings. Sometimes it helps to have a list, a real list of either what you want out of a partner or what you want out of a relationship, just keeping it top of mind so you're able to reference it and remind yourself. It really works wonders for the brain, like from a psychological perspective as well. So yeah, get out of the situationship. If you don't want to be in a situationship, there's nothing wrong with a situationship if both parties want that, but if you don't want to leave, it's not going to be good for you. And honestly, situationship breakups are, in my opinion, always harder than breaking up from an actual relationship, just because with an actual relationship there's that closure element, and you've been in a, maybe in most cases you've been in a secure relationship, so it's easier to break up and have a clean break, clean exit, versus situationships. They really suck. You never really know, you're never fully able to be yourself. So if that's not something you want, don't put yourself in that. That's like fucking mental torture. Don't do that. Thoughts on 50-50? This is gonna be such a quick answer. I've never really done 50-50. I don't plan to. I think if somebody is courting me, a man is courting, yeah, I'm not gonna do 50-50. No man that I've been out with or dated has ever expected me to do 50-50. I've paid on it's not like I've never paid for a date or whatever. I think I went to I went on like a gaming date or something. Not a gaming date, like an arcade. I've been on an arcade date a couple times, but I went on an arcade date, and obviously he paid for most of the day, and then I paid for the coins and stuff that we used. But yeah, I don't really do 50-50. I feel like, especially early on, no, sorry. That's just my personal dating expectations and experiences. Some people are like, oh my god, I would never. I don't even pretend to fake reach for the bill anymore. And culturally, where I'm from in Nigeria, it's not a thing. Guys get insulted. I remember like when I was older, and when I moved back, I was out with some guys, and I was like, oh, let me put my card down. They were actually offended. So I don't know what to tell you. No to 50-50, unless you don't mind. And yes, if it's right for you. If I'm trying to get into reading, how do I go about it? Oh, such a pivot. I love to read. I'm glad. I love that question. I love to read. I used to run a book blog when I was younger, and I was like 13, and I'd review books. I don't know if people knew I was a kid, but they'd send me their books and I'd read them and review them on Goodreads, and I had a pretty big following. So I've always loved reading. When I got into high school and we used to have required reading, I fell off a little bit. It just reading became not fun based off of that. And I'll tell you, the book that did it was Moby Dick. I hated Moby Dick, and we read it all school year, the entire school year for AP English, the worst. But it made me stop reading for a bit, and I recently got back into reading like a year and a half ago. I would say if you enjoy reading already and you know that you just haven't done in a while, get back. Everything's a routine. Get back into a routine of reading. Pick a book that is interesting to you, even if you think it's cringe or, I don't know, immature. Read it still. I got back into reading by reading one of the books I read when I was like 16. It was the Court of Mist and Fury, like ACOR, whatever that acronym is. You guys know what I'm talking about. Throne of Glass, like that one. And that was like fun for me. So that was how I got back into reading. And I found a lot of great books through Goodreads. Book Talk is cringe sometimes, but there are occasionally good books that aren't oversaturated and aren't It Ends With Us. I thought that was a horrendous book. Ask your friends for recommendations. Join a book club. I love a book club. I've been in in-person book clubs. I've been in online book clubs. I have fun with both. The last book club I was in, we read Down the Drain, or that was the last book I read from the book club, was Down the Drain by Julia Fox, and I really liked that. It was an audiobook too. Maybe you start with audiobooks, or I don't know. There's so many options to get back into reading. I would just pick a book you enjoy. If it's romance, do that. If it's like a thriller or a mystery, like just pick one that seems like an easy, quick read, and once you get through it, you feel good, and it's a nice brain exercise almost than just scrolling on TikTok or binge watching Real Housewives. That was like an ad at myself because I haven't read this year, and I want to read 50 books before the year's over. But yeah, also you can ask me for recommendations, guys. I have like good book recs. Oh, that was the next question. What's my favorite book that I read last year? That's so hard. I read a lot of good books last year. My book taste is also weird. I really liked My Year of Rest and Relaxation. A lot of people hated that book, and the main character is awful, but I liked her. She was fun. My favorite book I read last year was two. I have two books. One of them is called Eleanor Oliphant. I think I'm saying her last name right, but it's called Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. It's a bit of a darker read, but I cried. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. So I really enjoyed that. And then the other book I really enjoyed was Fourth Wing. It's a series that one's a lot more popular, so you guys have probably heard about that. But if you like fantasy, romance, stuff like that, definitely read Fourth Wing. It's good. And the last book, or the latest book, just came out this year, so you have 3 books to read back to back, to binge. I don't know, I have different book recommendations based on mood. I like my sad girl books, so yeah, My Year of Rest and Relaxation, Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, Cleopatra and Frankenstein, and then I still love, like, I've been reading a lot more books with Black women as the main characters, so I really liked Queenie. I really liked Nearly All the Men in Lagos Are Mad. That one also #true. And then Act Your Age, Eve Brown is one of the books I read, but it's a series, so there are also a lot of options for really great Black authors and Black women friendly books. My next question is my favorite country or city I visited. Favorite city I visited, I have to say it's always Barcelona. I don't know why I'm obsessed with Barcelona. It's my favorite city as of right now. There are a couple places I want to go that maybe could beat it, but it's been Barcelona since I was like 18. And my favorite country, I would say, is Italy. I love Italy. One of my best friends is Italian. I'm always there. Well, I'm not always there, but I plan to be always there. So yeah, love Italy. Black girl friendly countries to visit. Ooh, that's a hard one. Guys. Anti-blackness is just so prevalent that I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Obviously, countries in Africa are gonna be, not all, but most of them, pretty safe to travel and visit. I would say I haven't been, but Brazil is really high up on my bucket list, and a lot of people say that that's a nice place that they can go and they feel safe and comfortable. I have never had issues. Where else have I been that I haven't really had issues, or I'd recommend Black women go? Barcelona was fine as a city. Greece was fine. I don't remember having any bad experiences when I was in Greece. Italy was a little, Italians can be a little strange. I didn't experience super, super bad racism the way some people have, but I know that the guys were weird. I'd walk down the street and they'd be like, chocolata, Beyonce, like just like stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of catcalling. I would do some more research. I'd go on Reddit and do some research, on TikTok and do some research. My friend Marley, follow her on Instagram. She has a travel page called We Are Now Arriving, and she is a Black woman, and she does all sorts of reviews for countries she's been, or just ask her for a travel tip. She's been everywhere, guys. So yeah, that's my answer to that. I am going to go right into our next question, which is, I lost it, give me a sec, guys. Okay, amazing, I found it. Our next question is, do you think low maintenance friendships are real friendships, or do long gaps in communication make you guys more acquaintances? What a hard question to answer, and it's so nuanced, like more than I could do in the time we have left. I would say it depends on a lot of different things. For me, at the current stage I'm in, a lot of that is dependent on my age. I'm 26, I said I was 25, I'm 26, and my low maintenance friends are usually my longest and strongest friendships. So they're like the people I'm the closest to, my best friends, and I've known them since I was 18 or 16 or however old. When I was 20, 21, 19, like when I was still in like uni or high school, my low maintenance friendships felt more like acquaintances, if I did have any that were like that, just because I was less busy then and we all were in the same vicinity, so it was super easy to make plans and see each other and talk nonstop. Versus when you're older, life happens. We have jobs now, we've graduated, we're not in the same city anymore. People have moved cities, countries, continents away. Just life goes on. So if you have that strong foundation, I found that my low maintenance friendships now are usually my longest, the friends I've had the longest, and I have that security with them. I think if you're younger and you're going like 6 months without speaking to your friend, you guys probably are more acquaintances, and I could be wrong, but just probably you are. And I think part of why I'm saying that is because when you're young or younger, you're rapidly changing so much. Your personality's changing, your interests are changing, life is happening differently. So if you're not keeping up when it's easy to, you probably are acquaintances, and maybe you just don't really click with that person all the way. You don't have to force any friendship. Like if you guys are meant to be friends, it'll click and it'll feel really right, and you'll want to be there and check in and stuff. Another part of it is gauging how much effort is quote unquote enough in a friendship before it feels one-sided. And I advise most people to gauge and figure that out before it feels super one-sided for one person and not the other, and it turns into a big blowout. I know I've had friendships before where the person's like, oh, it feels we haven't spoken in a while and you just don't care, and I was like, oh, I thought we were good, I'm so sorry, I'll check in more. So you want to be conscious of that as well. Yeah, and sometimes you lose a friendship just because you stop talking, and that's fine. Maybe they'll come back. Relationships tend to not be super final, and people come back, and that's fine. Maybe you guys will be in a place where it feels right the next time you're friends. So hopefully that answers that about low maintenance friendships. I would just give people grace as well. Life is so hectic right now that maybe your version of showing up is just not what somebody else can do, and you have to be mindful of that as well. Okay, next question. Also, side note, this is such a side note, but I've been listening to this Sabrina Carpenter song all day, 15 minutes. It's just like on loop, like I'm listening to it right now on loop while I record. Just had to go on that quick tangent. Okay, my next question: are your 20s really the best years? Guys, I don't know. I'm mid 20s right now. I don't know. I don't love that sentiment. I think there's such a weird pressure to have it all figured out before you're 30, which is just like unrealistic. I think, again, social media, like Instagram versus reality of your 20s, like people are comparing themselves. 80% of my friends are like having quarter life crises, and they're like maybe they're not where they want to be work-wise or relationship-wise or living-wise. So I don't think your 20s are the best years of your life. I don't know what years would be the best of your life. I think it's like Severance. You should enjoy all years of your life equally. But yeah, you should try and enjoy all years of your life equally. I personally think I'm going to peak in my 30s because I'm just going to have my shit together a little bit more. And every year I get older, I feel like my brain lock in a little bit more, which I enjoy. Things aren't funny anymore. That used to be funny, and that's okay because I feel like I'm adulting. My adult brain is locking in, and I have so much better impulse control, making overall quality of life decisions. So yeah, I don't know if your 20s are like the best years ever. You can romanticize it though. I think you can romanticize the fuck out of your 20s and have them be amazing. And if you embrace that it's gonna be a time where you're learning yourself, you're learning how to be yourself as an adult with this new brain, and you're rebranding and you're pivoting and you're figuring stuff out. So if you romanticize some of that struggle, I think it makes your 20s a lot more bearable. I think having reasonable expectations, and again, reminding yourself of the reality. If you're scrolling through social media like Instagram or TikTok or I don't know, whatever, Be Real, whatever social media you use, and you're constantly comparing yourself and you're like, oh man, this person's traveling and this person's doing this, and like, you're gonna be miserable. Don't do that. You don't know what they're going through. You don't post when you're like crashed. I don't. I will have a mental breakdown like once a month, and like I'm not putting that on social media like, hey guys, what's happening. Like my close friends know and they help me, and just so keep in mind like your expectations versus like reality. I'm hoping 30s are better than 20s just because this is such a tumultuous time for so many people. I think I realized early into my 20s that it wasn't going to be like some magical, wow, these are my best years. And so that helped me reframe my mindset super quick. Now I just want to have fun. Like I'm just having fun. I'm trying to honor what I want to do work-wise, living-wise, romance-wise. I'm trying to honor myself and do what I want to do, and I think that's the best you can do. So yeah, definitely honor yourself. Do what makes you happy. Your 20s aren't going to be a cakewalk, and that's fine. It's not supposed to be for anyone, I don't think. The next question I have is wait, hold on, let me read the full question. What's the best life advice that you've ever received, and how did it help you? That's a good one. I would say the best advice I've ever received, well, I have two pieces of advice. They go together. I'll tell a little story. So the year I left New York, the year I moved, or maybe the year before, I don't actually know. Either the year I moved or the year before, I was really, really struggling. I was really going through it, and I just needed a break. I needed to not be in the city. I felt like have a little house of cards. My house of cards was collapsing in on itself. And so I went on this retreat, and this will probably be a separate episode as well, where I talk about the retreat because it was so amazing. But I went on this retreat to a place called Esalen in California, and it was amazing. And it was a workshop retreat, so we had two people. It was meant to be like three, but we had the two instructors, and like we did all this meditation and shadow work and all that mumbo jumbo stuff people consider. I thought it was great. I thought it worked brilliantly for me. But when we were learning, I think one of the big things we were focusing on was letting things go. And it's such a big staple of how I want to live my life going forward. So just not in my 20s, but in my 30s and my 40s. I've mentioned several times, but I definitely am a control freak, and I have a plan A through Z for everything. Like if this doesn't work, this has to work. And it was giving me so much anxiety in my day-to-day life, and just hypervigilance, I think would be the term. And letting things go has really just opened it up where I don't feel a constant anxiety, and I don't feel a need to have everything work out the exact way I want to. And that frees up so much more time for me to be creative and to enjoy my life. And this goes with, again, interpersonal relationships. I let things go if they're not working the way I want to. Sometimes I'll say something, but sometimes I don't even feel like it's necessary to say something, so I'll just opt out. And Buddhism. I'm like fascinated by Buddhism. I research it a lot, and that's one of the tenets. But letting things go, letting things be, I think that's amazing advice. And I think it goes hand in hand with my second point, which is change. Letting change happen is always going to be beneficial for you. And that's something that somebody told me. Letting change happen is not glamorous. It's not fun. It's lonely. And as you start to change, you find yourself realizing that things feel icky. Your surroundings feel icky. Everything is changing along with you. And so you feel very off kilter. And it's not even fun. I feel people make it like, oh, glow up, change, whatever, sound like it's such a fun thing. But in the beginning, it's very, very uncomfortable. And so you have to either be very hopeful and optimistic as a person to power through and persevere, or you have to be really inspired. Maybe you have a project, a passion, whatever it is, and it's inspiring you, or you can be delusional. And I would say I fall under the delusional category because it's just how I manage change for myself. And at the beginning of change, I don't know if you guys ever had like writing class where they made you do those like narration arc graphs where you have like exposition and then conflict and then you have rising action and the climax. So getting to the climax of your change, what a weird word, but getting to like that apex of your change, from there on it feels like great. Then you're like really in your groove, you figured things out. But getting to that point can cause so much pain and you have to endure quite a lot of discomfort. But the alternative is just sitting in who you are if you don't ever want to make those changes and being the same, and you're still in pain of a sort, but it feels stagnant, which I hate feeling stagnant. I think that's one of the worst feelings for me. Like I just thought about it, my stomach sank a little bit. And so if you don't want to end up just doing the same thing over and over and miserable and hating your life, yeah, you have to be uncomfortable and make those changes. You have to try something different. And yeah, start today, don't start tomorrow. Let things go, give yourself grace. That's what I would say my best life advice is. Just let things go, embrace change as painful as it is, and give yourself grace. Those are all things that I'm still working on too. By no means do I have all the answers. I'm just saying what's worked for me historically, and hopefully that makes sense. Okay, we are at our final question, and this one made me laugh a little bit, but basically it was asking, I'm summarizing, the person asked what to do if you're in a situationship or a relationship where you're being like, they're doing the hot and cold thing, so like breadcrumbing a little bit. And I would say you should leave. I think if you are in a hot and cold situation or you're being breadcrumbed, there's no benefit to it. Like why would you want that? And I'm going to go into why you wouldn't want that. But before I do that, I know breadcrumbing and the hot and cold thing is super, super in right now. If you're on TikTok, if you're doing like those dark feminine versus light feminine, or like even guys with like their podcast bros that are like, yeah, confused or pull back. It's a natural thing. It's a manipulation tactic to get people to be like obsessed with you or crave your presence, your attention. So that's what's happening to you, first of all. And I'm going to bring up, not in like great detail, I would say you should read this study, like this research, but there's this dude named Ivan Pavlov, and he ran these like famous dog experiments that showed what classical conditioning is. And I'm saying this, I'm bringing this up because you are, my love, being classically conditioned. And it's basically a process. So he did this with his dogs. He would bring them food randomly, right? And just give the dogs food and they would eat. They'd salivate, they'd eat, cool. And then he would ring a bell the next time he brought food, and the dogs were like, wait, why are you doing that? And they wouldn't know what to do. They just was like, they didn't know what the bell meant, so they'd not do anything until the food came. Then they start salivating, and eventually he rung the bell and brought the food enough times that they associated that bell with the food, if that makes sense. And so they'd salivate whenever they heard the bell. So that's what classical conditioning, it's like a very for dummies textbook crash course on classical conditioning, basically. And I always think of hot and colding as conditioning because it's meant to trigger an anxious attachment style in the person where you never really know if you're going to get their attention and you want to kind of work for their attention. And I don't think that's a good thing to do. In the past, when I was younger, I enjoyed stuff like that. I'll say I used to do it. I didn't mind if it was done to me. I just was like, haha, this is fun. Games. As I get older, I'm not as into the games. Like, it icks me out when guys do it now, especially if they're grown men, older, and they're doing that. I'm like, And so several different things could be happening. A, he's just not that into you. And he's not actually hot and colding you. He's just not that into you. And he's like responding when he remembers, which sucks, but leave. Absolutely leave. Or B, he is into you, but he gets a kick out of conditioning you and leaving you on anticipation mode. It's almost he'll get more out of you that way. And I find dudes that, or men that do the hot and colding, breadcrumbing thing over and over again just to be gross, and they typically have low self-esteem. And I don't mean this in a bad way, like lots of people have low self-esteem, but I usually find they don't really like themselves or love themselves, so they can't conceptualize why somebody else would. And so they have this need to keep people at a distance, but they also are lonely and they crave relationship and having companionship, and you just end up in a weird situation where you are being mind fucked all the time and you don't know where you stand. And again, it's a dating thing that people do, both men and women now, but I know you're asking me about a man. So I would say you should leave is my final answer. Yeah, pack up, leave. You don't need to figure out why he's not texting. You don't ever want to be like in a situation where you're like, why aren't you texting me? What can I do? Pick me, choose me, love me. No, don't do that. Don't do that. And don't do that to other people. Don't breadcrumb people. If you're not interested, just don't respond. You don't need to condition someone into being excited to receive your text, and you shouldn't be conditioned because you're not a dog. So that's my answer to that question. Yeah, definitely read the research on Pavlov. Just, it's nice to know when you're being classically conditioned because it's a manipulation tactic. Like, it's 48 laws of power, the art of seduction, all that stuff. And it's something that you should know so you can tell when you're being manipulated. I just strongly believe that. But thank you guys for all the amazing questions. This is more of a chill, low-key episode. Give me feedback if we don't like this, if it was boring. We can definitely try something else. Maybe I'll have a guest host for the next Q&A session so it's not just me. But I really enjoyed the questions and answering them, and I might do a little blog post to go with the episode on my Substack where I also answer in a written format. Maybe I can go more in depth there. New episode not out this upcoming week, but out the next week. And a reminder to please save the podcast, download the podcast, and rate the podcast. And yeah, interact with us on social media. I love that. I always say my podcast page is like my personality page. And yeah, hopefully next time I have some intro music and you'll have a guest as well. So thank you guys for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, of your weekend. I'm probably going to release this over the weekend, so I hope you get to enjoy your weekend, and I will see you so soon. Maybe I'll see you before next weekend. If I'm like inspired and I have time, I might do like an episode before the next one, like a mini one. So yeah, we'll see. But bye guys. Bye. Mwah.